I think we
Oh,
got reset. Sorry. Okay, so I do apologize. A little bit delay. I am having a little bit of technical difficulty. here, here, Aria's going on about how she got started, and since we didn't get to hear any of that, I do apologize. Usually, I hit the broadcast button, and there's no problem whatsoever. But so again, sorry everybody, a little bit delayed. Glad to see you here. And so we're dealing with one of our wedding vendors, and so she doesn't have to feel nervous anymore because I've already messed up. So hey, you can't do any worse than that. You already got a practice of what you've done already.
see,
So
there you go. No, I feel good.
you're awesome. So you've got the trifecta, or you've got all the pieces. You are a female-owned business, self-starter, small, local, and you do calligraphy. You are in the ancient, I say ancient art form of lettering. I think it was like when you see those books, old books, and they have that very ornate letter. That was like the original forms of art. So how did you get into being a professional calligrapher?
So, being a professional calligrapher,
A professional calligrapher.
honestly, I've always had a love for art,
Right.
and sharing my art with other people. And so it actually started, believe it or not, my love of calligraphy started with poetry.
Okay. Poetry.
Myself and some friends of mine, we hosted a gathering for some older people in our community just to do something nice for them, tell them they're appreciated. And I wrote a poem for them to take home with them. And so with the poem, it was such a hit. People loved it, and I didn't expect that at all. It was just
Right.
something little that I did. And so I started messing around with calligraphy, got my own little set. And, I knew I loved words, right, and writing. And so I was like, well, let me try typography, right?
Right. Right.
And so I got better and better at it and used my new skills to make gifts for other people and,
Awesome.
then from there, I went into selling.
Gotcha. So when you say you got a kit, I mean, because every time I see that, it's like those metal-looking pins with like the flowery looking ends. Is that what you purchased?
Yes, uh-huh.
Okay. All right. So, how do you get started with that? I mean, is it like one of those where you have to put the ink in, and or you kind of keep dabbing it and stuff, kind of thing? Is that what's how it works?
Yes. So, traditional calligraphy, sometimes you'll see in movies, right? They have that big old feather pen, in the 1800s,
Yeah.
and they're writing. And so it's somewhat similar. I don't write with a feather. I'm not that
Oh,
fancy.
okay.
Um, but you can use things called nibs and pen holders. And so pen
Mhm.
holders are usually made of wood, and nibs are
Okay.
usually made of metal. And
Okay.
so you're able to take an inkwell, right, or an ink bottle, and dip your nib into the ink, and then you can continue to use it to write.
Okay. Gotcha. So the feather is just kind of an old, just way to kind of make it look ornate, the holder look ornate, right?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. So you say now I formerly was a printer, a lithographer, offset, print person, and typography. And when I think typography, I'm thinking about somebody who's basically a typesetter. So
Mhm.
when you say you study typography, what is exactly typography? Yeah, you say it.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're right. Typography is usually associated with the mechanical typing, right?
Mhm.
But
Right.
along with typing are fonts, right? And so
Right.
the nice thing about calligraphy is you're not creating fonts with a computer necessarily, but you're
Mhm.
creating them by hand. And so you're able to create, and adjust the spacing for different fonts and the height of your letters, the slants, um, design of your
Mhm.
different letters. And then once you create an alphabet, well, then you have yourself a font and you can make all types of things. And so creating my own fonts was a way to gain more practice with calligraphy.
Oh, okay. So did you kind of start copying others, and then you like, well, I'm going to add a little bit of serif to that one, a little bit more slant or a little bit more thickness to it. So is that how you
Yes,
kind of worked yours?
yes, in a way. Uh-huh. I never wanted to copy an entire alphabet, right? But I would look for different examples and try and freehand them. and also using drill sheets, which are just
Okay.
like the different components of a basic alphabet and calligraphy. You're able to
Okay.
practice them, and it almost becomes like muscle memory, right? And so when it comes
Okay.
time to make your own fonts, you already have the movements down and it's fluid and it makes it look very professional.
Gotcha. And that, it's not as easy as you think. And I have terrible handwriting to begin with. I mean, I would have to take and just go very slow. And when I did go to college for drafting,
Mhm.
and we did that was one of the first things you learn is lettering, because there is a certain style of lettering that you typically will see on a blueprint. And still, using all the stuff that we were supposed to use, I was still terrible at it. Um, and then we went to AutoCAD like within the first month, and then I never had to touch that again. But no, it's very intense, that just drawing a letter, because it's not just writing a letter, it's drawing it, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Do you have your own specific font that you're kind of favoring, that you favor?
In a way, yes. I favor more modern calligraphy
Mhm.
fonts because copperplate is beautiful, but copperplate is very difficult. And you see it less and less in, modern calligraphy and wedding invitations and things of that nature. So modern is more favoring towards cursive, but there are elements that are added to it that make it calligraphy.
Right. So you say copperplate? Is that an industry word, or is that like, um, is that just something? Because when I see copperplate, I'm thinking about the big fold, big fat bold serifed writing. But is
Mhm.
that a style of writing?
So copperplate is a style. Copperplate is
Oh,
what you would normally associate with, um, fonts that are hundreds of years old, right?
okay,
And so,
okay.
before we went live, you were mentioning how you associate calligraphy with the old type of embossed, lettering you find on the front of a book cover, right?
Right, right.
And so, those types of more sharp, more structured fonts are what you would call copperplate.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Yeah, because I know there's like a gothic, like, to me again, when I'm thinking calligraphy, I'm thinking of the very ornate, even like gothic style of typeface. And but like you say, it has evolved into a, you know more modern version. And just like, with anything else, it kind of matches the times, right? So
Mhm.
the funny thing is that this, right? They don't teach cursive writing in school, right?
They don't.
Anymore.
Ironically enough, I was the very last class in my state to be taught cursive.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. So and again, that was, I know I was always told that, don't write cursive if you want to make sure that people can understand what you're writing, because it is kind of an art form in itself, cursive writing. You know,
Mhm.
I've also worked as a notary public here in Florida while ago, and I asked somebody, I said, "Okay, I need you to sign this." Also, just sign language, sign this, and they wrote their name out in regular text, and I was like, "No, you need to sign it." And he's like, "I
Right.
can't. That is my signature." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, "Oh
Yep.
wow, what a doofus I did." He never learned how to write cursive, so.
It's crazy. It
But,
is, but to be honest with you, like you mentioned, calligraphy is a lot more like drawing, right?
right,
I
right.
have horrible handwriting.
Oh, really?
Horrible handwriting, but calligraphy is structured and is more art-based, design-based, and so with that, it comes much easier to me than trying to write, neatly.
It's just kinda like those people who stutter, who can't speak clearly, but they can sing because
Yes,
it engages
yes.
a different part of their brain. So, reason why I was kinda looking down, it's not because I'm not interested, because you're extremely interesting. Because it seems to tie in with everything that I've ever touched in my life as far as printing. And we see, I just used written text today. I used it.
Yeah.
No, but we do use tech, use that every day. And lots of times, like whenever I was looking to create the thumbnail for this particular video, I was like, what would be good for a calligrapher? Because she's going to be able to look at it and say, that's not my personality. Uh, but so we do that every day, but we find it very easy. So now let's kind of focus in specifically on this idea of the wedding part. Now we can go into other stuff as we move along,
Mhm.
but if I was a customer and I said, Miss Davis, I would love to have you do some work for me for my wedding coming up, because the woman I'm married, she deserves the best. And what kind of services can you offer to make my wedding more personal, custom?
Well, first of all, I would congratulate you, right? Because what an amazing, milestone to be reaching in your life. And naturally, you want the best. You want the best for your boo, you know? So,
Yeah.
um, some of my services include custom suites, right? Or pre-made suites. And
Mm-hmm.
so the difference between the two is you can either come to me with an idea that you already have. You have in mind clearly what you want, the kind of font that you want, the kind of elements, the feel, the emotion you want to communicate with your wedding suite, the colors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or with a pre-made suite, I already have fonts you can choose from. I have designs you can choose from. You can change the colors at will. And it's a bit more structured, right, for customers who have a lot going on, right? They're trying to plan their wedding and everything, and they haven't really set aside time or, haven't made those design decisions themselves.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah, because sometimes there's people that are just, hey, you know what? I want to be totally involved. I want to, tell you exactly the fine detail because I've had this dream in my mind forever.
Mhm.
And then there's people's like, you know what? I just want to be with this person.
Mm.
And so it goes one way or the other. But so you say sweets. Now, are you using that word instead of package? Or
Yeah.
is it like, okay.
So a
So,
tradition
yeah,
Go
go ahead.
ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just
Well, I
gonna
was going
say
to I
it.
think there's a delay here.
Yeah.
So yeah, go through and explain that what a typical suite would be.
Right. So suite, for my company would include nameplates, right? Like where if you have custom seating, people know exactly where they're supposed to be. It would also include the envelopes and the invitation and the return. Uh, what's the word for it? Return card that people can send in the mail, right?
RSVP,
Along with
RSVP.
postage. Yes, the
Okay.
RSVP.
Okay.
And then additionally, right, if a customer has more that they want to add to it, some people want to add directions, or some people have special requests from their guests. Well, those are additional pages that are added to the wedding suite, which is, mailed out to each invitee.
Right. Yeah. So you got your, sometimes you have the engagements, with the save. Now, this is what's new to me is I thought the invitation would be enough, but they're like, here, get to save the date. I'm like,
Yep.
well, does that mean that everybody who gets to save the date is not necessarily an invitee? Or have you noticed that? Or do you have like, okay, everybody, just let me let you know your presence, and the presence is spelled with a dollar sign instead of an S. Cause here I'm speaking from ignorance. So is that what you come across? Is that the way it usually works?
So it all depends on the couple, right? And to
Mhm.
save the dates are, like you mentioned, purely to let people in your life know that you are getting married. Now, with the addition of Zoom, many people will give invitees the option of either viewing the wedding on Zoom or viewing it in person, especially if they're further away. And so,
Mhm.
save the dates also come in handy because they help you to let your friends and family know, if they have to travel. Hey, several months in advance, if you really want to come, you're more than welcome to come. Here's where it's going to be. And they can start looking at flights and hotels, or if some couples choose to buy hotel blocks, right?
Wow.
You know,
Yeah.
so it's
That's
it's a big ordeal. It really is. Weddings are, but it means a lot as a calligrapher to be able to help couples through those steps and help to make it a little bit easier for them.
No, I gotcha. Yeah, it makes sense. Because that means, so how far in advance is I mean, suppose let's create a imaginary. maybe it's 150 people. Oh, let me pick a real hard number. 150 people, and the wedding is going to be here in the future. Um, how far in advance should they get a hold of you to create just a very simple predetermined package?
So if they're going to include a save the date, right, where they want to, do what was mentioned before, they want to get the word out as early as possible. People usually send those out around 5 to 7 months in advance. And
Okay.
so if you're looking to get that done with the save the date, the latest I would say to contact your calligrapher would be maybe about a month before you want to send out those save the dates, right? Because even within a month for 150, it's puts them on a time crunch, right? In order
Right.
to get those invitations out and get them looking the way that the couple wants them to. Now, if
Right.
they only wanted to order a save the date, then a month is much more achievable.
Yeah.
But if they want everything done all at once, well, then you're going to have to give the calligrapher more time because everything is done by hand.
So do you do it broke up? Usually it's like, okay, this is the package, and they're like, hey, you know what? Just let's work on the save the date, and then you can deliver the other products as we get closer. Because sometimes
Mhm.
people, like you say, they RSVP, and so they won't need their nameplate. Is that usually how it works, or do you just prefer to do it all?
Well, RSVPs are just to let the couple know who's coming. But if you have an in-person wedding with reserved seating, the person has to know exactly where they're going to be sitting. And a lot of times people
Right.
won't save, the invitations or take them with them if they're traveling a
Right.
long distance. And so the
Right.
nameplates are already at the venue and they give people a chance to look at something, oh, something pretty, oh, it has my name on it,
Right.
and also to allay any confusion on the day of. Everybody knows exactly where they're seated.
Gotcha. And so, but would that necessarily have to be done all at one time, or like whenever you? Because if the save the date has to be out there so far in advance,
Mhm.
can somebody wait and kind of delay? I mean, they'll pay for the whole package, but do they
Mhm.
say, okay, just work on it so you can split it up in time wise that way?
Yeah,
So that it's
absolutely.
okay. Yeah, because it would be crazy to have everything done and then, you know, um, oh well, Uncle George had a fight with Aunt Sue, so they're not going to show up, and here you've paid for that. So I did have a question here, and so can you use your design on the cake as well? So somebody loves your design, and they're like, hey, I want that on my cake. Not a Publix cake.
Mhm. Right.
For those of you
Well,
outside of Florida, you may not know what I'm talking about, but that's like the best cakes you can get in Florida. So
absolutely. So, that is an interesting question. It's not something that I've had requested yet.
Mhm,
Personally, you would have to take that up with your cake decorator, more so than
mhm,
myself,
right.
because they're gonna have more expertise on exactly what designs they can create.
Mhm,
Because, I mean, if it comes to it, I'm happy to send, uh, a calligraphy file, right, a
mhm,
digital file to the couple, and they can pass it on to the baker and see if they can do anything with it.
right.
But again, it's a made to order situation with the cake, so it depends on what the decorator specializes in.
Gotcha. Okay. So you don't mind, would that be an additional cost if you're like, hey, you know what, I got to do a little extra work here to provide this to someone? Because like with me as a photographer, I take a picture and yeah, I share it, and my wife reminds me, said, hey, you got to put your copyright on there, you got to put your watermark on
Exactly.
there. But um if somebody was to use my photo possibly in their marketing, I'd be like, hey, granted, I didn't have to do any more work, but you are using my work. So do you do
Exactly.
something similar? I know you can't put a watermark on a cake, but
Absolutely, absolutely. So, one thing that I like to refer to, in terms of a legal sense, right, with an established business, a legal entity is like a common law copyright.
Mhm.
And
Right.
so when you're an artist, right, and you've worked hard and this is an original work coming from you, it's not just about the initial purchase, but it's also about, your reputation, right?
Mhm.
Your company's reputation. And
Gotcha.
so it is important, to keep track of that, right? Because you don't want somebody passing off, your work as their own. Nobody wants that. Um,
No.
but it is important to keep that in mind. You know, you don't have to charge exorbitantly, but to keep everything, you know, within your company, it's important.
Right. Yeah, protecting your intellectual property, or as I just say, IP from now on.
Yeah.
Okay. So, have you ever had a situation where you had a very involved bride or bride and groom, and they really wanted to be like, "Hey, this is what I want." This is, we all get those customers that are like, "Why
Mhm.
I thought you hired me." Have you had that situation, or you've been skating through without that issue?
So I have had that situation, not necessarily with the bride and groom, as much as the organizers of the wedding.
Oh,
And
okay.
so, you know, sometimes it may not always be the bride and groom who are in charge, you know. And one thing that I try to do is be as understanding as possible, right, with
Mhm.
the customer because they have a vision or they're executing a vision for somebody, right, as a wedding planner, and they want everything to be right, every
Mm.
single thing. And so some people may feel that if I can control more of it, well, then more of it is going to turn out just right, you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
And so I do have clear policies, you know, when somebody chooses to work with me that it describes how much information they can give to me, you know,
Mhm.
and how much work I'm going to be doing. And then if they start requesting extra things beyond that, well, then that's going into a whole different territory, right? Horse of another color.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but,
And
you
it
know,
might literally be a horse of a different color if they got horses on there.
I
Right.
literally, yes.
Yeah. So yeah, because the funny thing I've come to appreciate with DJs and everybody, and myself as a photographer, is that there are people who've normally it's somebody who's already been married, and they are the authority. So now
Uh-huh.
it's like, let me tell you, this is what you should do. And maybe the bride and groom have no idea that this is going on. So if I
Mhm.
can ask you then, who was it a family member that was doing the organizing of this, or was it a wedding planner, or where was
So
that conflict coming from?
so it was a family member,
Okay,
yes.
okay,
Mhm.
gotcha. So we don't want to, if you subscribe, I will give you the name of that individual so you can talk about it.
Absolutely not.
I'm telling everybody, everybody who's watching, if you subscribe, I will
Customer
let you know who the name.
confidentiality, buddy.
Yeah, no, no, I got you. It's understandable. So they were trying to improve the situation by giving their input for
Mhm,
that. Okay. And now that's kind of curious to me. Is it because you kind of knew them on a personal level that they were able to get to you, or did they say, "Oh, this is who my calligrapher is, and this is what they're doing," and they called you? Because to me, the only way that somebody would know that I'm the photographer is if I told them on a live YouTube, or maybe the couple told them.
mhm.
So, um,
Yeah,
sorry.
so, they were the one who placed the order, right, for the couple.
Oh, okay. All right. So they did have a little bit of vested interest in there. But like I say, sometimes you as a photographer, you'll be, hey, you know what? Everybody can take a picture. Everybody knows how to be a photographer.
Mhm.
And they're like, you're over there taking the picture. And there are pictures that you must take, even though they're the driest, most boring thing in the world, but you got to take them. And then somebody comes up, Uncle Joe. He's like, "Let me tell you, this is what you ought to do." Because I took a picture at a wedding one time before. So, um,
Yeah,
so
that
like you. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, that is one thing that I do not envy about the photography field, is because you are there the day of, you're doing the work the day of, right? But most, if not all of the services I offer are offered and completed well before the wedding starts. So
Gotcha. You're
I
behind the
do
scenes
my
kind of thing,
services exactly, you don't even
right?
need to know who I am.
Yeah, and that's I guess maybe that's why photographers are the way they are. They say that they are introverts, but they love attention. I'm going to be honest with you, because
Oh,
when
do
I
you
was
love attention, Dave?
well, hey, I guess I wouldn't be running a YouTube live if I didn't like attention. But it's like, no, 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 I'd never do that.
Feeling like,
Uh,
oh, stop it. No, 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 keep going.
yeah, and sign language used to be going like, oh no, 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 come on, come on, come on.
Mhm.
So no, because as artists, we're afraid to put ourselves out there. I think, but then when people like it, they're like, okay, here I am. You wanted to talk to me? Okay, so enough about me. Putting that aside, so you do the save the dates, you do the RSVP, you do the envelopes. Now, do you purchase those the stamps, or is that something that's included in the price, or what?
So
Oh,
stamps can be included in the price, if the bride and groom or whoever's placing the order has a specific preference on a
mhm.
design that they saw and they really liked, well, then I would prefer it if they just purchased those separately, right? Because it takes a
Okay.
lot of the guesswork away from me. You know, they may have
Mhm.
found it and then I look for it. By the time I find it, it's gone. You know,
Exactly.
exactly. So.
Yeah, it's like, hey, and I went on Amazon and they said there's six left. So order it. Like, well, no, it's probably
All
not
right,
going to
I'm
be there.
like,
N-
my main concern is the calligraphy elements of the
Yeah,
package I'm on.
exactly. That's where your expertise is. Okay, so I did have this. We did have this other question, and I think it's pretty good. Do you also use shapes like animals to make letters? I mean, I guess sometimes you can just draw the letter, but you can. There's some fonts where you actually use other items to create the letter. Do you do that kind of thing?
So, I've never used animals before, I've never had that requested, but I have actually used floral elements, natural
Okay.
elements in some of my designs, and so that, adds a more of like a bohemian, whimsical type of a feel to the
Hmm.
design, especially if that's something that the bride or groom has requested or for any other events that I do, whether it be graduation, anniversary, etc.
Hmm.
It gives it more of a themed look,
Gotcha.
for
Right.
the event.
Gotcha. Kind of matches. And do they use now? Whenever somebody comes to you to do this, do they say? I know that you said you had the two packages, but do they normally, or do you request, bring me a swatch, or bring me a picture, or how do you get your inspiration? If there's going to say, I want you to use your good judgment as a professional, and here's what we kind of have in mind, or how does that usually work for your inspiration process?
So, you know what? Art is a lot based on emotion and feeling. And so what I usually ask couples, if they have no idea um, what type of design they're looking for, I ask them what kind of theme or kind of feel they want their wedding to have. Some may say elegant, some may say fun or classy or modern or uh, light and springy,
Mhm.
things of that nature. If they're having a winter wedding, they may want winter themed,
Yeah.
uh,
Frozen.
exactly. Right?
Elsa is
Oh,
going to be.
goodness, frozen. But, different things like that. And a lot of times they'll have a much better idea of what they want when those kind of questions are posed to them.
Gotcha. Yeah, and and then you can derive something that's actually customized. It's like they have the wants or these creative. They've got these suggestions, and then you are like a writer, or, technically a writer, can coalesce that into the right idea because you have the skill to do it. So that's pretty so cool. And you said you have some things in place. So is there certain things that you like? Do you tell your couples only because you're paying for it you can be involved, or do you what is one of those things that kind of protects the process that you would say?
So, I tell all my clients up front, they can give me as much input in our initial consultation that
Hmm.
they want, right? So I ask them to be prepared for that, have an idea of the need to, send me over files of colors or pictures from Pinterest or what have you, for me to get an idea of what they want. That's perfectly fine because that's what the initial consultation is for and it's included in the price.
Right.
Now, if after the creative process begins, after I start designing, they decide they want something different, or they
Mhm.
want something added, well, then that incurs an additional price because I'm now having to change the design, and it costs me more time and more effort, which is what we're getting paid for.
Yeah, exactly. So now I know as a printer, as a you we would always give somebody a proof of something. Is that what you typically do? You give them some kind of proof? Because you can't, I can't imagine going through the whole process for just a
Mhm.
proof, and then they say, no, I wanted this ribbon to go this way. And
Yeah.
is that how you or is it like a line art kind of thing or what?
Yeah, so, normally with my suites, a lot of times the, calligraphy is by hand, but the designs themselves can be created using digital software. And so
Hmm.
what I'll do is I'll create a proof, or mock-up in, one of my software applications and add a watermark and then send that over to them. And then they can tell me if they like it or if there are any other additions that they want. And then if there are any physical elements that are added, like wax seals or ribbons or things of that nature, that's agreed upon well before I start the working on the suite.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. So just to kind of review this a little bit in that fact that, by the way, if you like the video, you can always like it and subscribe. um,
Might as
no,
well.
we just got, but most importantly, if you have a question, we have a number of people looking in. If you have a question, we'd love to hear it. And, Aria, she's,
I'm here.
ready to answer any question like, how big is the earth and things. Oh, those are technical questions, so we won't go that
I
far.
wish I knew. Oh.
It's at least this big because that's how big the globe is outside my house.
Right. It's gotta be about 12
At
inches in
least this big.
diameter.
It's big enough for me to stand on it. It's got to be pretty big. So we have the save the dates, we have the return it, RSVPs, we have the invites and the cards. Something you showed me, I was trying to pull it up, was a picture of, was it a menu
So this
that
was
you've
actually
done?
an order of ceremonies.
Okay, I'm trying to find it here. I don't know if you had what you call it, WhatsApp me or what? Was that way we were communicating?
It was in a text message, I believe.
Yeah, text me. But it was like very good. It was very. I was like, man, this is nice. That the way to lay something out. That yeah, let me see here. Well, I can't find it now. I'm sorry. But do you
That's
have some
okay.
examples of your work there that you've done? Or
I do. So a lot of times what I use, in consultations is, visual aids, right? Because it makes
right,
things that much easier for
for
people to
sure.
see. And so what I have here today are some physical copies of some of the fonts that I have created. And people can choose from these when they're creating a custom or a pre-made suite. And so
Okay.
these are some of the fonts. So you
Oh,
have
so
some
you now that's hand drawn, handcrafted. That looks awesome. And so you put the stamp on there and everything like that. So that's
mhm.
pretty awesome. Let me see here if I can. That is cool. Surprise.
Yeah.
Let me see. Let me see if I can pull that down here. Oh, that is cool. And then you just now that jewel is something that you purchased separate from that, or
Yes, uh-huh. So this is
okay,
one of those 3D elements I was mentioning.
okay. Well,
Mhm.
there is a question here somebody has while we're showing off all your cool stuff. So Candace is, do you ever do greeting card bundles? Greeting cards. So I guess that would be outside of wedding photography. Or what? Not. Of course, it's all wedding photography to me. But weddings is you guys is that outside? Do you do stuff like that?
I do. So my business is multifaceted. And so
Okay.
not only do I do calligraphy services, but I also make greeting cards and then custom greeting cards and things of that nature, whether it be for a business, right, that's wanting to send out thank you cards or invitations to their corporate events or
Hmm.
just for personal use. And
Okay.
so I have not done bundles. Usually I will have packages that I offer at pop-up shops or things that are in person.
Okay.
But since my business is built more so on a consult basis, I usually gravitate towards custom orders.
Gotcha. Yeah. So it's a little bit more difficult. Now, I guess that was one of the questions. Let me see if I can pull this in here. I'm going to try. Oh, I can't do that. So there That's what happens when you hit the wrong button. I was trying to figure out how I can bring in one of those examples you gave me,
Do I have
but
permission to share screen on here?
I believe you can do as you wish if you can do that. Oh, here it is. I got it. I got
Got it?
one of them. Let me see here. Share screen, and let me pull this up. Okay.
I'd
And
say this is probably one of my favorite projects.
well, go ahead. Go ahead and share screen. You do that.
Okay, let me see here.
I was like, I'm so used to Zoom, and it's like, this is the way you do it.
Yes. Okay.
As you do that, I will work on uh, that. Let me bring up from my computer here, and let me pull it up. It's on the desktop. But so, what you're going to show us now is what? What is that?
So what I'm about to show you is actually a wedding program and an order of ceremonies that I did
Oh, is
for a
that the one
wedding.
you sent me, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
No, okay,
that's the
that
one.
was the one I was fighting to get up there. So yeah, if you could bring it up there, that would be great. So an
Yes.
order. Now you call it an order of ceremony, and so that is different than just a regular old program. So this
Mm-hmm.
is something that you could think of, and I'll run my mouth while you work on this. This is something that you could offer that I wouldn't have even thought of, is going beyond the program, because sometimes you don't even have that. You don't have the names of the people. You're just like, oh, who's the next one? It's like the
Mm-hmm.
you know whenever they love connection, whenever the person came around the corner or something, whatever it was, the dating game, and they'd come out, oh, that's who they got to do that. Oh my goodness, I can't believe they were never good friends to begin with. But you can make those comments beforehand and not be surprised if you had the program. But that is a pretty cool um, order of ceremony. You got it up now? You got it ready?
For some reason my browser isn't allowing me to do this. I'd have to
Yeah,
exit out all this. So,
let me
but
share.
I actually do have examples on my website, and so I can
Okay,
actually upload this there. And if
okay.
any of the attendees want to see some of my work, they can head on over there, and they'll see exactly what we're talking about.
Right. And we'll make sure that you have the ability to click their link. I was trying to bring it up as well, and it's just kind of giving me a little issue, I think, because of the type of iPhone thing I've got going on.
Mm.
But the point is, yeah, that I was looking at it, and it's really classy, something that you always want to have at a wedding, because it is all a lot of fancy frilly stuff. So, have you ever done a menu? That was another thing that when I saw that, I thought it was a menu, but I think that would be a good idea. Have you done menus for weddings?
I have not. I've done what menus for personal events, just
Okay.
to do it, but I actually haven't done it for a formal event for somebody else.
Okay. So, if you want to be the first one to get an original Aria Davis menu for your wedding, this is a place to be. So, because she's not done it before, and you'll be the first one to get it done, she'd love to do it for you. I mean, of
I
course, for a
sure
small
would.
fee, but you know, you could say this was the first one, and like 2 years from now, whenever she's on Rachel Ray or whatever great company, David Tutara's show, and said, yeah, I know there's one person who was the first person to get my first menu for a wedding
There
event.
you go. A little shout out to you.
Yeah, don't forget little Dave over here at Photo Trial. But what was the other thing? Now you have. Is there any other products like that are what you consider like little additional things that really, or if you had an idea of like, I think this would be great to add into a wedding package, but it's not usually called for.
So, there's actually a lot that you can do for a wedding, especially now because people are always coming up with such great ideas. So
Right.
some people choose to have signs at their weddings, little
Okay.
pop-up signs, that they'll place on a table or something like that. That lets them know, it's a beautiful way to showcase the bride and groom name together the
Right.
day they got married. And some people also choose to include table numbers or people named their tables. Some people
Oh,
choose to include a monogrammed guest book, right, where they have something written on the inside or as a centerpiece on like a page where people, will
yeah.
write their names or small messages. So really the possibilities are endless when it comes to stuff like that.
Right. And, and that's kind of like you're getting a whole package. It's not like you're going, and I know you'd never do this, but go down to the dollar store and get the crate paper from there, and you go to Walmart and you pick. Whereas you can create a whole atmosphere to that event so that it's cohesive. And
Mhm.
I think that's what's because sometimes, as a printer, we would have books and books of wedding invitations, and you just had to pick from that you know,
Mhm.
and you could have. I think it was. I don't know if it was one time. I actually have my invite right over here. A part of my invite, we keep it. We've had it 30 years.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, somebody said they had that same wedding invite. I'm like, wait a minute. How did you have the same one? You mean out
Right.
of all those
Dang
books?
it, I thought it was unique.
Yeah, yeah. If it happened to you and you were the artist, it's like, oh, wait a minute. I just scratched out the name. But that's one way to have a very customized portion of your wedding. And I think it's relatively inexpensive compared to, say, a venue. Sometimes, oh,
Mhm.
I'm going to get this most expensive venue because only very few people get it.
Yeah.
And you could spend thousands for that. Whereas for something you can hold in your hand,
Mhm.
um, it's relatively inexpensive, I think.
Exactly. And a lot of times when people order from me, I don't use cheap materials. My
Mhm.
materials are all premium, and so they'll last for a very long time. And
Mhm.
they can even be used as keepsakes. Matter of fact, the pictures that I was referring to and that the people on the live will be able to see on my website was ordered specifically to be a keepsake for the wedding party. And so not only was it functional, right, where it was a program, order of ceremonies that helped everybody keep the flow of the wedding, reception, but it was also something that they could frame, a gift to the bride and groom to place in their home, right? And so
There
when
you
you look
go.
at that, right, even when you feel the elements on it, right, the silk ribbon and the wax and the emblem and everything like that, it helps them to remember, right, what a beautiful day that was. Has
Yeah.
their wedding colors on it, has everybody that they, were in the wedding with, and so it creates memories.
Yeah, again, like I said, I actually have our invite here. It was kind of done fancy. Do you have a way, in addition to just creating one? Do you have, if somebody says, "Hey, by the way, I didn't think about this, but one of the friends kept an invite. Can
Mhm.
you?" And here's their place card. Do you have a technique of preservation and display, or do you just have them go to Michael's? Is that just not your area for that?
So it's not something that I offer currently for the calligraphy part of the business.
Gotcha.
But it is definitely a great way to preserve it, is to frame it. And so I do know a
Mhm.
little bit about framing. You
Okay.
can choose to invest in just plexiglass, or you can get glass that is UV protected and will actually protect the keepsake from the sun rays, which can bleach the colors and things of that nature.
Right. And that's true. That don't and you said this kind of got me kind of thinking about 10 different things is that you do have to use some protective glass because as far as photographs are concerned, they're
Mm.
super light sensitive. And so yeah, don't cheap out and not get the UV glass because they think it's a sales ploy. I mean, it helps. It's not going to stop it from just deteriorating. But the other thing is on your materials, what do you have like a very exotic material that you've ever picked up? And it's like, what was the most expensive piece of material that you've ever used?
So that is a very good question. I'm not sure about expense wise, but
Uh-huh.
feel wise, material wise, a lot of times for my nicer invitations, I'll use thicker cardstock, and I also
Hmm.
use either hot press or cold press watercolor paper. And
Okay.
so some people may think, well, watercolor paper, why use that? Well, it actually soaks up the colors really well. and the contrast, the saturation of the colors is beautiful on watercolor paper, and it also helps to preserve the design even more, right? So it's not going to tear easily, it's not going to bend easily, and it can withstand a little bit of wear and tear if it isn't framed. So.
Gotcha. Well, that's
Mhm.
good. The funny thing is, I know we've focused a lot on your business and then kind of on weddings, but sometimes weddings produce other things.
Mhm.
Um, you get married, and then about 6 months later, there's an opportunity again to have a little specialized invitation. Do you ever do those announcements of an addition to the family kind of thing? Have you ever done
Yes.
that? And anything special for those?
So I haven't had any baby shower announcements yet. I would love, love, love to be able to do that, because it's such a special moment. But I actually do have greeting cards that I've done plenty of for baby
Okay.
showers and baby announcements, and even pictures, right? Even if it's not a baby shower announcement,
Mhm.
it may be something where it's like, oh, well, so and so turned one, or this is their 6 month picture, or baby boy, baby girl. So I
Yeah.
have done those, and they're a lot of fun.
Cool. Yeah, it is like you say. It is. It's an ancient. I say ancient because from the Egyptian times up until now, and for as long as there was paper to be written on, this has been an art form. And do you have a lot of different opportunities? You have weddings, and you never did a divorce, have you? You've never done a divorce announcement because somebody said that to me about taking engagement photos, and then if they didn't get married, they just got engaged. You'd have to go through it and make two pictures and Photoshop each other out and
Right.
stuff like that. Like,
That's a little bit above my pay grade.
yeah, exactly. I don't do. I only go one direction. We're getting
Right.
hitched. We're
Forward.
not unhitching. Yes, positive direction. But as you say, those things become keepsake because there's really two. I'm going to say there's two things you get from a wedding to commemorate the wedding itself. One of them is a process called photography. You can have physical proof that you did this. So that's why I think about possibly you and I are on the same page because the DJ, the music's gone into the air and it's done.
Mhm.
The cake, it is done once it's eaten. And even if
It's
you put it in the
delicious, it's
freezer,
gone.
but the one thing that remains forever besides the ring and each other is the paperwork.
Mhm.
you know and so that is a very important aspect, I think, of a wedding that sometimes get overlooked. Just as a note, my wife and I, once we got married right here in Florida. We
Mhm.
went to SeaWorld, and when
Oh.
we went in there, they always have these vendors,
Mhm.
and they were doing paintings, but they were doing paintings with either like aquatic life, local life. And so each letter was either like it could be I'm trying to remember, like the letter L for love. It was
Mhm.
like a plant, and then one leaf kind of came off that way. And
Yeah.
I think one letter was a flamingo, and it was kind of a Japanese, or I'll say Asian inspired look. But that's something I've had for 30 years. You know,
Yeah.
and it's only one other thing I think I've had longer than that, and that was the reason why I got married. She's here, so we've been together over 30 years. But so you have weddings, you have a wedding, birth announcements. Is there anything else that you're like, hey, you know what? People do this too. Uh, we have anniversaries, of course,
Mhm.
as far as
Actually, people do graduations quite often.
there you go.
Um, yeah, graduations, and on a sadder note, I've actually had people request, funeral and memorial invitations. And
Yeah,
so it's, something that I observe on a case by case basis, right? Because it is such a delicate thing, right? When you lose
right,
somebody in death.
right.
And so I try to stick with, some of the happier events and adventures, but that is something that people do request.
Yeah, and I think in those cases, it's like, okay, this is just as a serious event. It's kind of a precious. I say precious because it's unique to them. It's theirs. And I've been in Zoom these last 2.5 years. I've had to do a number of collages for funerals, and it's like especially if you know the person and you're like, yeah, that was exactly who they were. It's not easy, but
Yeah.
it's necessary in certain cases there. So
Yeah.
funerals, we had that, like you said, funerals is another thing. So there was you have those opportunities now. You can at this time, if there's another story that was like, oh my goodness, this was a rare occasion, this was a rare request. Did you ever have any requests that was like, oh, I don't know about that? Because as a photographer, people say, well, what about this type of wedding? What if it was a same-sex wedding? If it was, what if it was a
Mm.
wedding that this or that? And I'll be like, well, I guess I have to deal with it as it comes. But have you ever
Yeah.
ran across a request that was just like made you stop and think?
Honestly, no, I have never had that issue. It is important as an artist, right, to know what you will and won't do, right? Because at the end
Mm-hmm.
of the day, people who provide services also have the right to, not offer said services. But it is something that I do try and remind myself of and take into consideration of, what I will offer and also what I won't offer. Hmm.
Right. Yeah, and Candice was kind of bringing to that point too here. I think about spiritual milestones, baptisms. That's another one. And you know, there are a number of if we're going to look at scriptures from the Bible, there are a number of cliche. I'll say they're popular scriptures, but then
Hmm.
maybe that person they either had a scripture or a saying or a quote that was uniquely them, and
Yeah.
that's another opportunity that you could create something customized to that rather than going down to the store and picking up
Mhm.
just one of those fold up cards there. But
That is
I,
true.
I was thinking, I don't know if do you know the comedian Brian Regan?
I don't think so, no.
Okay, well, he's hilarious, but he does a lot. Yeah, this is going to relate to what we've been talking about. He says,
Okay.
could you imagine the guy who came up with the blank inside card? Because he said, I went to a card store and it was just blank inside. It's like, dude, I'm not doing nothing. I'm just, there's no work being involved in this at all. Like, could you imagine the guy who gets that gig who does the blank inside card? So,
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's easy as pie, right? All you have to do
yeah,
is be outside and you're
yeah,
good.
just print it. So that
Yeah.
was the other thing. I had two other questions specifically. One of them, when does it go from calligraphy to sign making? Because you said you do like little signs, I guess, right, at
Mhm.
weddings. But when does it go where, hey, they're like, hey, we want you to make this big sign that's going to be like right behind my mother-in-law and say, best mother-in-law in the world or something. I mean, when do you stop saying, hey, that's too big for me?
Well, I usually try and stop it at, about however big my printer, can
Okay.
allow. And so, if it's a piece of paper that's something I have to special order or things like that, usually the price will go up.
Mhm.
And I try to make sure that my prices stay about mid-range, right?
Mhm.
Because I want to make sure it's accessible for everybody. So
Right.
once it hits a certain size, maybe about 12 by 14 or 12 by 16, that's about my limit.
Right. So if somebody went to the dollar store and got a piece of poster board and said, "Hey, could you just put something nice on that?" It would be like a special consideration. All right.
Exactly.
So
That is one of
okay,
those moments.
yeah, you'd have to think about it and see if you have the ability. You don't want to just get a bunch of markers and try and work it out.
Mhm.
Chisel
All
tip,
right.
permanent marker. So
Exactly, because quality is important. We want guys.
it's like, man, I can't smell the flowers over the marker here. I'm just kind of getting a little bit of a
Right,
yeah,
right, and then you also don't want it to be like, "Oh, this isn't at all what I wanted. I wanted this to be prettier." I'm like, "Well,
yeah.
you provided the supply.
Well, it's like
Work with what
again,
you
I
got."
that's true. It's like, well, this is what you gave me. You can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear, but you can make a pork rind, But
See?
but they used to have. I keep saying this. You probably everybody's ever listened to me before have heard me say over here in Merritt Island in the DMV. Everybody doesn't like their driver's license picture, and they had the sign right next to where you got your picture made. It says, "If you want a better picture, bring a better face." So,
Ah!
so if you want better stuff, you got to bring better stuff, right?
Yes, that is
So,
true. I would
um,
never say anything about your face though, but the
no, well,
supplies,
hey,
yes.
well, somebody has says no. You have to go back and look at one of my other shorts on that. Now,
Oh boy.
yeah, no, it was just a little anyhow promoting myself. But the other thing is, it kind of goes back to our original conversation about your intellectual property. Do you ever say, "Hey, I know you're kind of on a budget or whatever, or I don't have the time." Maybe what you've done, you've last minute wedding. Not a good idea. Not ever a good idea to have a last minute wedding. See, that's the thing. As wedding vendors, we're saving marriages because we're making you stop and think about what you're doing, not just with money, but with time. So we should get extra money for it. But suppose somebody says, "Hey, Aria, I love what you've done. I like the proof. Can you just make one for me and we go print it at UPS store or the local print shop?" Do you do things like that?
So it's not something that I've done in the past, because for one, I am remotely operating. And
Hmm.
so if I have a customer who is halfway across the country, right, and they ask me for that, well, then I can't, I can either confirm or deny what quality of a print you're going to get, right? I can
Right.
only give you the highest resolution, file that I can. And then after that, well, if you end up with something that's blurry or something that's, just not up to par, up to your standards, I don't want that to happen, right? I don't want it to
Yeah.
reflect badly on me as a professional. I don't want it to ruin your occasion or to, lessen or dampen your day, right?
Right.
And
For
so it is
sure.
important, to give notice, right? If somebody is last minute, and they are trying to get everything together, they're scrambling. One thing that I recommend is larger companies, right, who can give you something that may be a bit more expensive or not as unique,
Hmm.
but they will get it to you quickly, and it
Right.
will be of a decent quality versus
Right.
trying to do it yourself and, "Oh, what if somebody forgets?" Things of that nature. It leaves a lot up to chance.
Yeah, and I totally get that myself. It sounds like a little bit of a line, like, "Oh, well, I can't ensure the quality." But let me tell you, if you take one of my pictures and I go have it printed professionally, because I can't print them, and then you take that picture and then you go to Walmart and have it printed out there, or Walgreens, the picture is going to look different. It's the same picture, but the
Mhm.
quality of it is not going to be the same, and it does make a difference.
It
5
does.
years down, because I've got some prints that I've got printed professionally. Then I had some that was printed. They looked very good, but they were done at a print shop. They were not photographic quality kind of printers, but they were good.
Mhm.
And so I will expect those to act differently as time goes by. So that
Yep.
is that there is some truth in what you're saying there. As far as I can't, once it gets out of my hands, I can't let you know. Now,
Exactly.
to me, in something like that, you would have to charge a little bit more because you are in effect now buying the license to this artwork,
Yep.
right? And it's like I don't, once it gets away from me and you use it, who's to say that print shop over here are going to not try and copy yours, and then it becomes an
Mhm.
issue. Um,
It is
just
very true.
talking about big companies, and uh, this is my sad story, I'd say, is that I worked at a print shop, and my boss said, "Hey, you're getting married. I'll pay for your invitations." And I'm
Mhm.
like, "Well, that's nice. I appreciate that." Actually, I was going to pay for him. I was going to pay for him, but he's going to give me a break. And something happened. He's known for firing people. He fired a couple people, and so I come in and I get my check, and it was $0. And it was like, he says, "That's because of your invitations." I'm like, "Dude, thanks a lot."
That is not a deal.
but but no, so that was my experience with that situation. I mean, I liked what we got, but you know, if I had the option to have somebody do it personally for me, there's a human element in there. So
There
I
is.
appreciate that. So again, I was just checking to see if there's any other questions, comments, concerns, or personal beliefs that anybody might have on this. And did you have any other anecdotes or stories that you had come across that you were like, "Hey, This is something that needs to be shared. This needs to stop because people are crazy out there.
Oh man. Well, I just, one thing that I will share with anybody considering uh, using me for calligraphy services or anything else, I'm always going to make sure that I do my very best to, make sure that the products you receive are beautiful and are going to match your event and are going to help to solidify your memory.
Mhm.
Uh, and so that's something that will set you apart, as a small business owner from larger companies, right? It's the
Right.
uniqueness, it's the personal touch, it's the human interaction, and the emotion, the commitment that goes into each and every order. So shop small, guys.
Yeah. Woo-hoo, push it up. So I do appreciate, and I love I totally get the artistic vibe on your wall there. I love it. Being in New York, I was like, this is where you'd expect an artist to be in this
Uh,
little location. Yes, I
oh
love it.
yeah, brick
Looks
wall.
awesome. Yeah, I love the wall. So, um, yeah, if you are looking to get some personalized, customized invitations, whether it be a wedding, a birth announcement, sadly, death announcements sometimes come along, but Jolie Paper Company. Now, you said Jolie comes from, is it Jolie? Is that said correct?
Mhm.
Jolie. And where did you say that comes from?
So, funny story actually. I was searching and searching and searching. Hey, hello from Mexico. Thank you so much for coming. But yeah, Jolie is actually my middle name. And
Okay.
so I knew I wanted something that was reminiscent of my middle name
Hmm.
to be in my company name. And so Jolie is actually French.
Okay.
And papery is also it has a Latin root. I can't remember if it was Spanish or French that I took the word from, but Spanish would also be equally fitting as I am part
Right.
Mexican.
There you go. Oh,
And
okay.
yep, and it's a company.
Okay.
So
There
Jolie
you go.
Papery Co. or Jolie Papery Company.
To me, I got a French vibe off of that. That's why I was thinking if it was properly said Jolie or
Hmm.
Jolie, or had a little accent to it. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's a pretty. And the site is awesome. I mean, it really fits that aesthetic of what you do. It's not, like sometimes you'll go to a site and it's like, who did this? Like a third grader. But when you go to your site, I'm like, oh, I'm in a calligraphy store right here, and
That's important.
you have other things you do. Not you're an artist in general, but you have all kinds of offerings besides just an invitation. So I would encourage you to go check out the website, and we've got it there. Uh, and you can tell that it's a good one because it's got the S there for security. So she's paid extra to make sure it's a secure site there.
We want no bugs, 0 bugs
No,
allowed.
somebody hacking your stuff. But
Absolutely not. You will not get
you
that
know,
from me.
another way, if you don't have anything coming up right now, you can always like the video just to show some support for Aria. And let me see. You are based out of where?
Near Chicago.
Near Chicago. I
Mhm.
had the opportunity to go to Chicago one time, but so you're outside of Chicago, so you're near the big city there, and but you do remote. How far have you been out? How far have you sent something out?
Ah, goodness. I've sent something as far as California.
California. Gotcha.
Mhm.
So nothing worldwide yet. So
Yep,
if you're
absolutely.
wanting something imported and you're outside of the country, you want something imported, it's probably a lot easier to get some invitations past customs because they don't carry any kind of forbidden, you know, there's no bugs or anything in it. So,
That is true, that is true. Yep,
but
but, for now, all
I,
my US peeps, hit me up. I'm
well,
here.
there you go. Keep it. So, and we got some from Mexico. We're glad to see Luisa tuning in there. So we appreciate your support on that. But as always, just keep using, as Aria said, you want to use our local businesses. Not that we don't like Walmart. You can always go in there for a good laugh once in a while. but but you will support your friends, support your neighbors. And I appreciate something I saw recently. It said, why wouldn't you buy something from your friend who is a small business? I mean, don't you like your friend? I mean, of course you should do that. Rather see them get the money than, some big corporation who's going to blow it on an expense trip to wherever. And I'm not going to say Cancun because it's not a bad place. It's just, but and just to let you know, this may very well be the last Friday live session. We're going to go to a Wednesday at 7:30. Now, our next Wednesday at 7:30 is going to be a little bit more photography based, and it'll be with my co-pilot. I say co-pilot Chuck. He's flown with me. He's also a drone pilot. So we'll be talking about photography, drones, and stuff like that. Because what we're going to do is focus on small business in the Space Coast. Now, again, we can have other people come in. If you really like the business, we'll throw it out there. But right now, we're going to just focus on our local next door neighbors and try to promote them as well. Welcome to come. 7:30. We again will blast it all over the websites and stuff, and be glad to have you come in. Throw us a question. See if you can stump us, which probably won't be too hard for Chuck and mine. And we again, this is for everybody. And we are going to be having a series of improve your photography, how you do it. And one of our series is, episodes is going to be, I'm sick of photography. Nobody told me there'd be math involved with photography. So we're going to invite that. That's going to be upcoming. Usually they say don't do that on YouTube, but I'm going to let you know here because, Miss Davis is such a draw for everybody that she'll stick around and let me do the announcements here for that. But thank you for expressing your art to us, letting us know about it. Your website is going to stick on this for now on, and we will put it in the description. So if somebody's looking to get something done, and I see you got your co-pilot there. Is that a Labradoodle or what? What kind of dog
I
is
have
yours?
a golden doodle, actually. He's my little art assistant.
Okay. I have a friend who breeds them, so he's down here in Florida. He's my twin, Mr. Durden. So I'd have to show you a picture of him later when you think why that would be funny. Give you some context. But again, thank you. Thanks to everybody who showed up and asked questions. It makes it that just more enjoyable. And hey, it's something you can ask a professional without feeling like you have to buy anything. But you should buy something.
Absolutely.
And as always, challenge yourself every day to be a better photographer. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.